Hello and welcome back to the Beyond Pain podcast with myself, Joe LaVacca, and Joe Gambino. In today's episode, we sit down with me. I answer a few of Joe's questions, including what injury has had the biggest impact on my life, and what is my number one piece of advice for those struggling in pain. We hope you enjoy this episode and all future episodes of the Beyond Pain podcast. And if you do, be sure to like, subscribe, and all those fun things you do on social media to help the podcast grow. Without further ado, here's episode 5.
Welcome to the Beyond Pain podcast with your host, Joe Gambino and Joe LaVacca. Join the two Joes, two physical therapists, as they discuss how to navigate the uncertainties of pain so you can move beyond it and get back to the activities you love most. This podcast is for Joe, and their guests to share their clinical thoughts and ideas based on their collective clinical experiences. Can this information be for you? Maybe, but we cannot know for sure. Therefore, it is always worth talking to your healthcare provider to make the best decisions in your care before you implement anything on this podcast. And please use common sense.
Open it up.
So what's going on, brother?
Same old man. Can't complain. How about you?
Pretty good, I would say. Had a nice week. It was a little bit less busy and chaotic because Avery was on spring break this week, which it seems like between her and Addison, no one's in school anymore. So it's a wonderful time to be a 10-year-old or a 13-year-old.
Sounds nice.
Apparently you're just off every other day. So instead of having Avery yesterday and today, because she's with her mom on their little spring break, it was nice to just kind of get caught up and watch the draft last night. I mean, we're recording the day after the draft. Don't know what to think about it. It was a really big night. I built it up really big in my mind because you had the Yankees starting at 7, you had the Knicks starting at 7:30, and then you had the draft at 8, and all of them were big disappointments. So, but I think that's sort of this whole idea of being a New York sports fan.
Yes, I mean the Knicks, they surprised the hell out of me. I haven't seen the Knicks make a run since the 90s. Since
it's fun.
It's kind of nice.
It's fun. I obviously you don't really see a lot of other teams play. You get them once in a while, but I gotta say, I mean, Joel Embiid is so good. I mean, guy's got 1.5 knees, and he is still like head and shoulders above everybody else on the court right now. And so I think it's pretty remarkable what he's doing.
Imagine if he had 2 knees.
I don't know if we'd stand a chance in the series, to be quite honest with you.
All right, man. Well, everybody, thanks for putting through our banter to get started with the episode. Welcome back to the Beyond Pain podcast. I am Joe Gambino, and I am here with Joe LaVacca. Hopefully, you guys have gotten the different Joe's voices at this point.
Hopefully.
But yeah, if you're enjoying the show, obviously we'd love for you to subscribe. This way you get these right to your device every time we let them out. And always please follow us on Instagram. Joe and I are most active there, and feel free to DM us. I'm not going to speak for Joe, but I'm in it all the time. I respond to every single DM that comes through. I know Joe does as well. So questions, comments, concerns, just want to say hi. Please do. I am at Joe Gambino DPT on Instagram, and LaVacca is Strength in Motion _PT. And this show will be live as well on YouTube if you want to listen to it there. YouTube channel is Cups of Joe's _PT, and that's it. Now we're in it live, and I have a question for you, Joe, as far as a little coffee chat segment, and I'm just curious because I don't know what to watch on TV anymore. So what are you watching?
That would be Baby Reindeer. I
just saw that. What do you think of it? Our initial
Cordy and I last night said it is maybe the top 3 weirdest show we've ever seen. Maybe weird's a strong word, but I mean, like, the complicated storylines, the complicated characters, and I mean, kind of, it's pretty graphic too at certain points. It almost makes you uncomfortable, and I think it's a really, really well done show. I think the acting is great. We obviously kind of finished up the whole series in about a week, so it was captivating our attention. But yeah, that would be Baby Reindeer that we are watching right now. And if you were sort of like, if we wanted to just switch genres completely and just kind of have like something a little bit more on the opposite side of the spectrum, we also just got done watching Foundation on Apple, which was way sci-fi. Yeah, so sci-fi, futuristic, sort of lots of stuff happening on that show. So if Baby Reindeer doesn't seem to be your cup of tea, and I say that purposely, a cup of tea, then maybe you just switch hardcore. You go to something like a Foundation. But those are the two most recent shows. So I would give those a go. And then maybe next week, if you're still stuck, I'll give you a few more recommendations.
So I would say we just finished Baby Reindeer, which was I thought it was weird. Out of the last 3 shows that we've watched, it was the best of the 3. I don't remember the names of them because Jen just keeps she's just selected them, and I don't remember what the names were. But we watched this Italian one. Maybe if people are just, I'll see if I can figure out the name. But it was such a weird show. It was about this I guess I don't know if he's like a serial killer, but he was pretty much he would kill people, or he ended up killing somebody. And I think it happened more than once. And he would take over their persona and just completely live their life. It was a very weird, very dark show. And then we watched that show that just won an Oscar. I don't know if they won any Oscars, but they're Oscar nominated. I can't remember the actress's name because I'm terrible with actress names. But it was the one where she had surgery. She had the brain of much like a 6-year-old, and then slowly developed. I can't remember the name of it. But that was a very odd movie.
I don't even think I've even heard. Sometimes I can usually jump on board with a plot or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess her parents said they were in some sort of accident, and he saved, instead of saving the mother, he saved her, and it was almost like a Frankenstein type of story. He did a surgery on the baby.
Oh wow!
On whoever, I guess it was the mother. I don't remember exactly how it went. But put the baby's brain in it, and I think the mother, to save the person. And so pretty much this person started, an adult, had the brain of a toddler, and then slowly would actually develop over the course of the movie into a full person. But very, very strange, very odd. I just don't remember the names of these titles.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, your description of it wasn't captivating me to go Googling it either.
I was trying to find the name because I'm terrible with these things, but is this it here?
Oh man.
Poor Things, is it called?
Oh, that's a movie, dude. That's
a movie. I thought that was a movie.
Oh, I thought you were.
Two shows.
I was actually going to say Poor Things. But then when you mentioned show, I was like, "What are you talking about?" Yeah. And then again, the first thing that popped in my mind was Poor Things because I heard sort of similar things, her parents died, and I was like, "It sounds like you're describing Poor Things." But is there another show I was missing? Yes, I have heard a few clients have recommended Poor Things to me, so I just haven't gotten around to watching it.
Not my cup of tea. Very odd movie, but anyway, let's digress from here. Let's get in. Today we are highlighting you, Joe. I'm very, very excited for this. So I'm very curious to see what you have to say about this stuff, and I hope you didn't go in peak. I know we talked about keeping these questions as a surprise.
That's why I'm a little nervous.
But I think it's gonna be fun. So let's get kind of right into it. I know you've had, we talked a little bit. You've had some injuries in the past. What is the injury that you've had that has had the most profound impact on your ability to do things?
As far as a limitation currently, or as a limitation when it happens?
Yeah. The whatever injury you would say has had the most impact on your life to date. It doesn't have to be current.
Okay. That's fair. I'd probably say so I could probably think of two things. Number one, I broke my left wrist twice as a kid growing up. Pretty young. I think it was like second grade and fourth grade. As a result, it never healed quite like it should. And I don't know if that was my fault or whatnot. Hard to kind of remember back to what I was doing back then. But so I don't have any fibrocartilage in the lateral aspect of my wrist. And if you guys are watching on YouTube, if I took my watch off, it'd actually be a little bit of a better demonstration. But you can actually kind of see like a lot of that like giving way sometimes, like on the lateral part of my wrist. It does still create some pain for me, which is why I think that I gravitated sort of away from doing a ton of manual therapy too, because it kind of just hurts a lot of the time. So my philosophy when I started doing a lot of PT practice and exercises and things like that was if I couldn't do it with one patient, I'm not going to do it with any patient, right? Because then it just becomes an unreliable sort of thing. So I thought my biggest weakness coming out of school, and maybe we probably most of us feel this way, was probably like with manual like techniques or skills. And then even when I went to some courses and classes, you know, none of them really fully captivated me into this idea that you know, manual therapy like had to be a thing for me with every session. So coupling that with the fact that it kind of just always hurts my wrist, so I have to be kind of careful with positioning and stuff, I'd say that's had the biggest long-term impact. And it was really when my back hurt, probably around sixth grade or seventh grade or eighth grade, it was around that time where I was introduced to the whole idea of physical therapy, because I didn't have physical therapy for my wrist at all. It just was like, hey, this is a broken bone, it'll heal. That was wrong, by the way. It was a little bit more than that, I think, just by evidence of what I just showed you guys. And then, but I mean, the back pain stuff when I was in sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, that's really what prompted me to get physical therapy. And, you know, we talk about kind of like sociology of healthcare. My parents were in physical therapy. My sister had already had physical therapy. So it was almost like when I got hurt or my back started to spasm, especially when playing basketball, I was like, ooh, I get to go to physical therapy now. This is great. So I guess like that's what really introduced me to it. And then my wrist fracture is kind of what still affects me implementing it to this day.
Gotcha. And your back, does that come up and pop up at like different parts of your life now, or does it still bother you at all, or is that like completely 100%?
No, I would say my now philosophy on my own personal injuries is, number one, I'm very lucky to not have anything recurrent or that I sort of deem recurrent. Over, you know, the last few years, I'd probably say I had a little bit of rotator cuff or, you know, sort of like inflammation for a week, 2 weeks, something like that. I definitely have had some Achilles discomfort from just doing a little bit too much with sprinting. That actually lasted for a little bit, but it didn't really impact my day-to-day too much, but it definitely would pop up with more intensity. And then I had a posterior tibialis tendonitis on my other leg from when I was sort of moving, actually. I remember it exactly when it happened. I sort of like just like leapt off the moving truck. I had a box in my hand. I just felt it just instantly sort of like just strain. But my philosophy now, whenever I have all those like little injuries, is I go in and I experiment with myself. I poke it, I prod it. I really tried to, you know, sort of take all the things that we know and really like force feed them. I'm like, okay, I know that this isn't neurological. I know that this isn't a red flag. I know this. So you know what? I think this is muscular. I'm going to start pumping it. I think this is a joint, so I'm just going to start moving it. I think this is a tendon, so I'm going to just gradually start doing isometrics and trying to spring it as much as I can. So now when I get pain, I'm almost like, ooh, this is fun. This could be a challenge for me. Can I push into this a little bit? And then can I then take that sort of like story or experience and then apply it to clients? Not that I want to make sessions about me, but you know, when I tell clients, hey, you can push through this and you could do this and you could do this, trust me on this because I've done it. And I've used the principles I'm trying to teach you and it resolved quickly, right? Or it resolved as fast as it could. And then this is how I didn't quote unquote miss a beat, right?
I like that. And you kind of stealing your way into a option that I had for you. So look at you, and you didn't even sneak and take a peek.
I didn't.
But
I
let's
didn't. And that's why I was so nervous.
yeah, let's stay here for a second, then I want to go back. I love the idea of experimenting when it comes to having pain. Because what I've seen, even just like working with however many people I've worked with at that point, up to this point, that the people who experiment and kind of not necessarily push the boundaries, but they're not afraid to move and do things and challenge themselves. Obviously within reason, right? Because people there's definitely a subset of people that can do way too much, and that's the problem. But those people who are like willing to like not baby it tend to do better in the course of rehab than somebody who's afraid to kind of challenge the tissue because they're worried about what that pain can become. So it seems like that's what you're kind of doing. Did you feel like that's something that you push over? Or you feel like you're kind of giving to your clients as well, as far as education goes, and how you end up treating them?
Well, I think that from the standpoint of a lot of the research that I've read or been exposed to, I think it just kind of helps validate a lot of the things that I try to teach clients. So when I sort of have this like pain and injury, and I'm sort of like, okay, well, I know that this is not going to be, prognostic for how long the pain might last, which, when the posterior tib stuff happened, that was really painful. I remember when I woke up with the shoulder inflammation, like I felt like it was hot, right? And I could barely move it. And I actually just remember started laughing, like when I was getting dressed. I was like, oh my God, like this is insanely painful, but I went to bed okay. So there couldn't have been a traumatic injury, right? So like taking those ideas, and I think it really strings along a story that, hey, the level of your pain does not correlate with the level of tissue damage. And, we can relate lots of stories there, but now me having gone through that, maybe I kind of empathize with that a little bit more. And then I can bring up those feelings. Hey, I remember, what happened when I started experiencing it. It was almost disbelief at first. It was almost like this, why me? It was almost like, hey, how long is this going to last? And then it was just sitting down with those thoughts and then trying to validate them. Like, does this make sense? Right? Does it make sense that I think that this would be, lingering for the rest of my life? Does it make sense that I don't think that I should do anything today? And then every time I tried to just come back and sit with each initial thought, I came up with a different solution. So that's what I really try to encourage clients to think about is, hey, come back to your mechanism. What happened? And for many clients, it's the Beyonce mechanism. Do you know what the Beyonce mechanism is, Joe?
No.
Well, they woke up like this, brother. They just woke up like this, right? So, it's hard to trace back, to the things you definitely should or should not have done. So we start there. Hey, I didn't have a traumatic injury and I have pain. All right, what's my next step? How sensitive is that pain? How much can I push into it? And then, most of the things that I've read or that I instruct clients on, and I think we touched on this in past episodes, is if your pain is around a 3-4, maybe maximally up to a 5, although maybe for some people a 5 is kind of pushing it, you're probably okay to be kind of going through that motion if you can control your movement. Like rep 1 looks the same as rep 7, 8, 9, 10. Your breathing is sort of regulated. I shouldn't be able to tell, via your facial expressions that you're battling through pain. Effort's okay, but I don't want to, see you battling through pain. And then I take those same ideas and I'm like, well, I don't know. It's all subjective scales, right? So how hard can I push this? Can I push it to that nth degree? And not that I would encourage clients to do that, right, for the most part. But I think it just, again, further allowed me to give confidence to people to say, hey, 3, 4s, maybe even up to a 5 is okay. Give it time. This is what we think it is. This is how long it should take to respond. And if it doesn't, hey, look, we reevaluate, we learn something. But we both got better in the process because I know we're probably not going to get it right the first time, right, or the first session. So that's why, working with someone like you or me or anyone else out there, it's a time commitment, right? Because things happen a lot faster than we think and a lot slower than we want, right? So you can wake up Beyonce style and then why does it not get better instantly? Well, that's just sort of how physiology works, and inflammation works and behavior works. So I think it's really helped me with my own sort of interpretation of the literature and being able to kind of put those things to the test. So hopefully it's benefited clients as well.
No, I really like that. And it kind of goes back into last week's episode where we talked a little bit about those paint guidelines that I use, and things being up to no more than like a 4-ish out of paint out of 10. Other than that, lingers, all being signs that you can kind of work through this and that it'll actually create some sort of positive adaptation. So I really like that. The other thing that I think is really important that you said is, even as as we're physical therapists, right? We understand pain, we understand movement, we like all this stuff. And when you have injuries, you even have to take a step back and be like, oh my, right? You have to process like the emotional component of pain, right? And that's why I tell people all the time. It's like, take a day, whatever you need to do to process whatever you're feeling as far as your pain coming back, right? We should never ignore, right, what you're feeling. But then take, let's see what happened. Let's take the objectives into consideration and like almost like reframe it a little bit. So this way we can get back on track and find that re-entry point if we need to, or see how quickly it comes down to recover. And then compare that to the past, right? Like when we start to look at a lot of the things that, like pain is a very subjective experience. You're almost immersed in it all the time. So sometimes it's really hard to see, what's actually happening from a progress standpoint. But, that's why sometimes you just need to look back like, oh, well, last time I had a flare up, those lasted for a week or two. But now when I have a flare up, it lasts for 2 or 3 days. Like that's a significant sign of progress to me, right? Like, oh, like I had a flare up, but in the past, right, I had to like sit on my couch for 3 days because it was so painful I couldn't do anything. Now I can like still go through my day to day, and it's the pain is much, the intensity is not as high. Again, right, signs of progress because you're capable of doing more with same pain level or less. So it's like kind of like you have to almost like think of these little wins that you've had in order to see some of that progress that's happened. So I just want to kind of highlight that. I think it's important because even as, again, right, as us being in the industry, I've had the exact same experience as you, where pain comes up. It's like, oh man, why is this happening again? And then you need to process it, play around with it, move it a little bit, and kind of see how it goes. Pretty cool there. Where do I want to go here? Do I want to go back? I don't think I'm going to go back to the risk. What I do want to actually ask you is, when you do have somebody who's been struggling with pain, and let's maybe do it 2 ways here. If somebody, let's start it here. If somebody like maybe it was a family member, wasn't somebody that you were working with in clinic, and they were struggling with pain, maybe it was someone who DM'd you on Instagram, what would be like the number one advice that you could get?
Well, I guess it's harder to say because the way that I would typically, answer those questions is it's very contextual, right? Like I'm sure when you message the DMs before, a lot of people, seek help on social media. And I think that's one of the best things about social media, or is supposed to be the best things about social media, right? This idea that you can connect with sort of almost everyone or anyone on the planet, right? Now, I think when the connection and the community aspect are weighed against individual things, that's where it gets tough, right? Most of the things I post on Instagram, or if not all of them lately, especially, are coming directly from what happens to me almost either that day or that week with clients. So whether it was sparking a conversation, some regression or lateralization we did with their rehab, a thought, whatever. So I think a lot of the times when people reach out to me and they see a post like that, they're like, oh, okay, like, this sounds like me. Yeah, it might sound like you, but it wasn't you. Just like the post the day before wasn't the same person I was kind of referencing or talking to today. And that's probably where I want to do a better job at on Instagram and with my messages to sort of say like, hey, every interaction is built off of a framework. But every interaction is sort of emergent in the sense that it sort of like just goes on its own. It grows from the first 1 or 2 questions, right? Like I didn't know what you were going to ask me today, and you didn't know how I was going to respond. So that could have thrown off your whole line of questioning, or maybe it kind of validated it. We didn't know until it's actually happening. So when people reach out to me on Instagram, I try to convey that message to say, hey, look, I'd love to help you. But the best way for me to do that and sort of give you the information that I think you want or that is maybe valuable to you, it's probably either just scheduling like a phone call, right? Which, I have on my website. You have the ability to do that, right? They're 15 minutes. They're totally free of charge. And it just gives us this chance to just kind of sit down and just get to know one another a little bit, or just book an appointment, right? I mean, again, with pain being so nuanced and everyone's story being different, and in our previous episodes, we talked a little bit about, and we'll continue to talk about this biopsychosocial model and all the other models that are out there with pain. It's almost sort of impossible for me to give you good advice. So I try to shy away from it completely. But that was a great question. And I'd be maybe interested in our next episode to see how you deal with those questions as well. But I'd say that's how I handle it right now. It's pretty middle of the road. I'm always going to encourage people to dive a little deeper with me. And then that's really just for their benefit, the way I see it.
No, yeah, I like that. I mean, everything's always as contextual based possible. Always good advice, right? I mean, the thing with anything on social media is that it could be a post that you see from myself, from you, from anybody else, right? It's almost a 50-50 chance of it working, not doing anything, or making it worse, right? So you do need to pursue with caution when using social for anything. And I'm similar to you. If someone DMs me, there's a lot of questions that I end up asking because I do want, the one thing I love about social media is the ability to connect with people. Otherwise, just having 80 some odd thousand followers would be boring if there was literally no connection with anybody whatsoever, right? So I usually just ask a bunch of questions, and usually those questions will lead to one thing. They'll lead to well, based on what I'm hearing, I have a free resource, whatever, that I could push you towards, right? That would potentially help. I don't know if it will, but let me know if it does. Or similarly, right? It's like, hey, I can open up some time on my calendar. If you want to chat, I'm more than happy to do so we can dive into this deeper. And let them make a decision as far as where that goes. And if it feels like something that getting free advice would be something that could cause harm, right, or I don't feel like it would actually be helpful, then it's guidance, like go see somebody in person, or go see your doctor, or maybe just where a conversation ends. It's like kind of take it case by case in that scenario. But I think you did a good job answering the questions, even though you were nervous, Joe. Appreciate it.
I was. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Appreciate
thank
you sharing.
Thank you for your line of questioning. Luckily, the questions I have for you in our next episode are different, so we won't have a lot of back-to-back things, which is
I was
fun.
really curious to see. That's why I wanted to be surprised. I was curious to see how different our line of questioning would be, and where these conversations around our own stories go. But thank you, everybody who has listened so far. Joe, I love you. Listeners, I love you as well, especially if you made it to the end of the episode and listening to me now.
It's always important.
And as we've highlighted, our next episode will be highlighting me and talking about my story of pain and whatever else that conversation needs to. See you then.
Mm-hmm. Take care, everyone.